Now we have the session, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, a workshop to strengthen research and understanding by Professor George Pullen. Professor George Pullen is the chief economist of Milky Way Economy, a fifth industrial revolution think tank and boutique consultancy based in Maine, Florida, Texas, and DC. He is the author of 5 books related to technology, space, and alternative finance. Professor Pullen is a subject matter expert and risk advisor for the Global Association of Risk Professionals. He is recognized for his work in alternative finance and technology as one of the leading thinkers in the space economy. He also serves as a board member and consultant for several small and medium-sized businesses in the space economy, and he is an investor into 2 investment crowdfunding platforms. Over to you, Professor George Pullen, for your session, Climate Change and Sustainable Development, a workshop to strengthen research and understanding. Over to you.
Thank you very much for that really flattering introduction. I'm really happy to be here today. I'm really happy to be covering this topic with everyone. I prepared some slides for us to go through together, but I want to make sure that this is informative and interactive. I do enjoy teaching the most, and so I want this to be like an open lecture and open sharing of information with each other. So let me pull up the presentation real quick, and we can get going. And someone in the chat, just give me a thumbs up so that I know that you see my slides fine. All right, yes, I see smiles. All yes, right, perfect. Fantastic. Okay, here we go. So what I want us to talk about today is the role of both blockchain technology and the new space economy as it relates to SDG13. And so the reason I think it's important for us to cover both of these topics is when we're thinking about ways that we can solve these problems, ways that we can address these issues, we should have a more full and rounded perspective of all the other things that are advancements happening in the larger market. So I'm going to cover both blockchain and the space economy with you. These both happen to be 2 of the things I'm very passionate about. Both from a blockchain perspective, where I teach at the University of New Hampshire here in the United States, and also the space economy, where I teach in the summer program at Columbia. So here we go. I should also give my quick disclaimer, which is in addition to Milky Way Economy and adjunct teaching, I'm also a senior government economist for the US CFTC, but all of my comments today will relate to my teaching capacity and my consulting work in the space economy. So I want to make sure that's clear and there's a distinction there, that I'm not speaking on behalf of the CFTC. So let's talk about SD13 real quick to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we are discussing and why this is so important. So we're looking at SD13. The first thing is that we're focusing in on what MSMEs can do in developing countries and what MSMEs can do to deliver change and to make sure that the actions they're taking can help us combat climate change and its impact. So there's really 2 parts there, which is a focus on the smaller enterprises, but also a focus on the change that's occurring, right, and the impact. So it's mitigation and recognition. So there's 2 corners there. Next is just to level set on the MSME markets in general, and of course, as an economist, I'm gonna talk numbers every once in a while, but I'm not going to do too many. I want to respect the audience, and so for MSMEs, we're talking about in most developing countries. Again, every developing country is different. They employ around 75% of the population. So these are very important centers of job creation. They also contribute 30% to GDP. So they're also important elements of economic activity and vibrance for those economies. Also, they tend to be heavy energy users. This is largely no fault of their own. This has to do with the mitigation, connectivity, and infrastructures available in many nations. We don't have the load shedding, load sharing, and storage capacities necessary for many MSMEs to manage their own energy consumption, but it is important to note their heavy energy use. Next is, let's talk about the ability to adapt quickly and dynamically. When we're talking about small and medium-sized firms and enterprises and even micro enterprises, they have the ability to adapt so much quicker than your textbook Fortune 100, 500, or 1,000 or Russell 2000 sized company. Okay, they don't have the multi-billion-dollar balance sheets and the thousands of employees. This also means that when they adapt quickly, when they have this ability to dynamically respond to indications from the market, from economic changes, that their change is not only fast, but also their change is critical to their survival, because they lack the larger and more fulsome balance sheets to help them if they have a misstep, right? So it's important that when we recognize their ability to adapt quickly and dynamically, that we also recognize that there is a fragility there, and we should respect that and make sure that we are providing the information necessary for those changes to be the most impactful, but also to not harm their current business. Also, let's talk about money flows. When we talk about money flows, I'm going to talk broadly about both sustainability funds that are named as such, but also more broadly, not just SDG, but ESG. I know we can all get lost in our alphabet soup here. ESG, just level set, we're talking about environmental, social, and good governance. It's not remarkably different from SDG, but it is important to make sure that we know our acronyms. So just to level set there. The forecast and the number that I come back to, I want people to hold in their minds, is that we're talking about money flows of $1 trillion over the next decade coming into funds focused on sustainability, ESG, and SDG goals. $1 trillion. Now that is outside. Oh, I did not turn my camera off, but it looks like it went off, but no big deal. As long as you can still see my slides, we'll keep going. In addition to those $1 trillion in money flows, it also has to do with the change and the dynamic change of companies participating in the marketplace who are modifying their investment policy statements, or IPS. As they are modifying their investment policy statements, this means that while there might not be a specific fund or targeted dollar amount going into these changes, that companies are looking to respond and companies are looking to supply direct investment to solicit these changes when it comes to combating climate change and climate change's impacts. So the reason that's important.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sure.
Professor George, are you moving the slides? We are not able to see them moving. We are still on SDG13.
Oh yeah, I'm still there. I've got.
Oh, great. Okay.
No big deal. Yeah, my camera light went down, but I can still see you, so I'm gonna keep going. So the reason, again, I want to provide this background to level set is when we're talking about a $1 trillion plus of money flow into target investments. What that means is that this money flow will expect both greater transparency and measurement of impact. And we're talking about transparency and measurement of impact for those businesses, especially for the micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, for those businesses that can demonstrate a transparent and measured system of change, they will receive the larger portion of that $1 trillion in new money flow. So again, this is very important. When we're talking about banking and we're talking about money flows, transparency and measurement are going to be two key differentiating factors for any enterprise looking to have a portion of those funds for their sustainability changes. So that gets us into our new business models, right? And that's where I want to really make sure that I'm providing the education here for folks is, what does it mean where we're talking about blockchain-based monitoring, and what does it mean we're talking about the space economy and its power of positive impact, and how that ties directly back into our SDG13 mission statement. Next slide. All right, blockchain technology. Blockchain technology is a technology which allows people to contract with others on a semi-autonomous basis. They have anonymity or pseudonymity, which means they are close to either not knowing each other or they only know each other's internet name or a other name that they put out there associated with their wallets and their transactions. Also, blockchain technology has many other features which are important, particularly when we relate to the transparency and the tracking aspects. So let's go through some of those. So we don't need to do a deep semester-long dive into every single tenet of blockchain, but I think that this list gives us a good overview, and then we can translate each of these back to how they will help us with our sustainability goals, right? So the first of the blockchain technology is a trust-enabling system. Okay, so this is remarkable because it creates new systems of trust for both peoples and firms. So when we're talking about investment dollars, and again, I mentioned that $1 trillion number because I want people to hold on to that number. That's a lot of zeros. We're talking about $1 trillion US in money flow. that trust between large financial institutions and small and micro firms will be difficult to create. One of the ways that we have seen this work out in other parts of our economy is that blockchain networks allow for this trust of a new complex network of actors to be more efficient. And so if we think about blockchain technology's trust aspect as an enabling tool, it can both help us have better communication with actors that are not generally associated with one another, and also improve our matching functions. All right, next is transparency. When you're talking about the large sums of money that we see coming into SDG improvements and targeted funds, the transparency aspect of blockchain technology is very important. So while it is necessary to make sure that we see a response and a positive outcome and action from these investment dollars, it is often difficult to see or say how that can be done in a scalable way or a manageable way for a small or medium-sized firm. One of the benefits of blockchain technology is that it allows for that transparency to take place in a manner that everyone involved can see. Now, I will mention here that this is not a silver bullet or a solution which is a magic wand that will fix everything. When it comes to transparency, particularly when we're talking about actors that don't know each other or processes that they're unfamiliar with, you will also often need oracles. Oracles are a term used in blockchain technology architecture, which refers to how we add additional information or data to a blockchain that is coming from the real world. These oracles, when we're talking about measurements of climate change or measurements of positive climate change impact mitigations, could occur based on what I would say could be satellite data, right? So you could see the lack of deforestation coming to us from satellite data. You could also see the change in particulates coming from factories or firms that have decided to have mitigation strategies in place. You could also see this from the outputs or loads. So this could be car activity, this could be truck activity. Another one for transparency is specifically on the use of funds. So using a shared ledger or a transparent ledger, which blockchain technology allows you to do, using that shared or open ledger allows people to know more precisely where their funds are going to make sure they have the most positive impact. Next is the decentralized structure. Again, we're talking about making sure that investment dollars, no matter where they're coming from, whether that be the United States or Europe or parts of Asia, that wherever they go to, that while they are not close together, that we still have a network of trust that brings them close together in their actions. Improve security and privacy. I think it goes without saying that we all know that we live in a world where cyber conscious and security threats are real. A nice benefit of blockchain technology is its inherent privacy and security features. There's also cost reduction things here. Blockchain technology in general helps remove middle people on complicated networks of fund delivery for reformed activities, reformed cycles, new business models, new products, or changes to existing products. If we were to add significant additional middle people and middle business operators when we're trying to get those investment dollars strategically to those small and medium-sized firms, that could really hamper their effectiveness. So again, it's a cost reduction. Tracking and traceability, we hit on this a little bit. We talked about transparency. Tracking and traceability is also something a little bit different than trust and transparency, because we're talking about tracking and traceability. We're talking about the ability to replay what we've seen previously occurring. That replay function is extremely important, again, because we're talking about the use of investment funds. These investment funds and these investment dollars be reviewed on a very regular basis. And so the tracking and traceability is important. Immutability. Changing the past is always going to be hard when you're talking about using blockchain technology. This is because of the block structure and the way that various configurations of blockchain technology allow for the hashing and the solidifying of data where one block is linked to the next. We don't have to get into the weeds on that. I don't know if that's actually beneficial for this part of the conversation, but that difficulty in changing the past makes the strength of the ledger such that more people have these other features, the trust, the transparency, the tracking, the traceability, and they feel better about them. And again, this promotes more investment dollars. Last is data provisioning features. I think this is particularly important in data sovereignty. I think this is particularly important because we don't want there to be a situation where micro, small, and medium-sized firms who are receiving investment dollars and sharing data about what their business activities are and sharing data about what positive changes they're making and sharing data about their products and services, that data isn't harvested, that data isn't monetized, and that they're actually being taken advantage of, and that their data is being taken away from them in a way that does not return benefits back to them. So I think we think we have data provisioning features and making sure that we make sure that individuals in micro and medium-sized firms who are receiving funds still have the ability to own their data, to be sovereign among their own data, and to monetize when they choose. That's very important, especially when we think about a future where data is money. Next slide. The next key topic I want people to think about is the space economy. And you might immediately be thinking, why do we care about a space economy when we're talking about global sustainability and development? Well, the first thing here is that the space economy is the next natural evolution from our fourth industrial revolution that we're currently in today. So economists are famously bad at predicting when the industrial revolution starts and finishes until many decades later. I think that it is safe to say today that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. The previous three industrial revolutions have been hallmarked by one or two game-changing technologies that quickly spread throughout the economy and then throughout the world. I think today with the fourth industrial revolution, we can see four very large factors all happening at the same time. The reason this time it's four, and I mentioned last time with the other industrial revolutions, we saw one or two technologies, is because as we can all see and probably can represent in our own lives, changes are happening faster than they've happened before. That's just not us being selfish in our own observations and not taking a rigorous academic approach and an overview. The truth is that changes are happening faster. It's not just us. These changes are also much larger. Many of these changes have the potential to be exponential. As humans, we have a very difficult time thinking exponentially. I think when it comes to climate change and climate change mitigation, I'm likely preaching to the choir here, but when changes occur rapidly and changes occur in a fashion that's exponential, we as humans have a very difficult time with risk management. So with the fourth industrial revolution, we have four key things happening, right? We have huge advancements in healthcare and medicine and biotech. These related to everything from gene sequencing to telemedicine to our ability to have customized medicine and customized drug therapies. Next is fintech. There's been a lot of changes that are related to the way financial technology has enabled banking products, banking services for both un- and underbanked populations. Third is the big data AI ML movement. This has tentacles into all of the other parts of our economy, but this relates back closely to what I mentioned previously, which is data equals money now, and we want to make sure that data privacy and data provisioning is part of any architecture. Fourth is, of course, new energy. This goes for everything from our conversations and other guest speakers on wind, solar, new forms of nuclear energy. All of these types of new energy, of course, battery, new storage facilities and new storage technologies relate back to this industrial revolution moment. So when we think about all four of these and lay them on top of each other, we realize that we are going, in fact, through a fourth industrial revolution today. And the likely beneficiary of all four of these is not just our planet, but also the fifth industrial revolution, which will likely be the space economy. The space economy has to solve for healthcare changes and making sure that we can have effective drugs, effective astronaut monitoring, space station monitoring for health and welfare of hundreds of people, if not thousands, working in cislunar orbit. Fintech and financial models. No one's taking currency to space. Everything around money, and no dollar can survive the vacuum of space. Everything around money will be digital. Next is big data, AI, ML. We'll get to this a little bit later, but today's space industry is really an extension of the data industry. And last, of course, is new energy. The advancements with both solar panels, space-based solar, energy storage. Many of these advances, many of these technologies are actually coming to us and being perfected today on tests and micro facilities on the ISS and in satellite experiments. So today's space industry is valued about $450 billion. The forecast for the coming economies is that we will reach somewhere between $4 trillion and $10 trillion in the next decade or two ahead. If you're looking at that for the first time, and those numbers for the first time, you can see easily that we're looking at a 10 or 20x in the lifetime of the vast majority of the people on this call, God willing. And so when you talk about $4 or $10 trillion economy, you're talking about a whole new continent's worth of activity. That new continent's worth of activity will have constructs built around it for how we interact with it, what it looks like for us to interact with that new economy in a sustainable manner. And again, this ties back, and I think this is a really important part of this. We look at today's space industry, which is a collection of firms, versus a space economy, which is a collection of activities, right? So economy, collection of activities and actors making together economic decisions to produce an economy. Space industry, collection of firms. It has three parts, right? So the three parts for understanding are upstream, in-stream, and downstream. This is usually where I use a visual aid of my pen, and I show you that upstream is launch. These are the rockets going up, and we all know there are many, many more rockets going up, including rockets by many billionaires. People have mixed feelings on that. We don't have to get into that. In-stream, this is satellite. This is space station, right? And then we have downstream. Downstream, well, the valuable things that come downstream are, of course, the research and development and the huge advancements that we have received from that research that takes place in space. Everything from the algae producing proteins in 95% of all baby food to the storage on your phone for pictures of your grandkids all comes from that space technology that was advanced. But the other big portion of downstream is what we already touched on earlier, which is data. Satellite data, telemetry, data, positioning, data. Data is the bottom line for the current construct of upstream, in-stream, and downstream, and where the money is made. Another feature here in the space economy I want to make sure we hit, and I want to be mindful of time, make sure we have time for Q&A, is Space Race 2.0 is a relay race. What I mean by Space Race 2.0 as a relay race is, if you look at our last space race, it was largely constructed around the need for the US and Russia, former Soviet Union, to compete with one another for scientific and technological dominance. The new space race, or Space Race 2.0, the burgeoning space economy that I see, is one where cooperation, coordination is a relay race. We are passing batons back and forth to one another. We have India coordinating today with the new Latin American Space Agency's construct. We have Costa Rica having cooperation with firms in Israel. We have Japan having cooperation with firms coming out of the Middle East. So the cooperation and coordination is unseen previously in space efforts. And it's important to highlight because these technology transfers relate directly back to our improved ability to understand the challenge ahead when we talk about our sustainability and development goals. And the important part about this when it comes to both blockchain and the space economy that I want people to think about, please, the next slide, in my closing, is neither one of these two technologies needs to necessarily be understood by all micro, small, and medium-sized firms. That is not the point of understanding the blockchain and the space economy. What is important to understand is that these two seismic changes are happening in the larger ecosystem. When we talk about trillions of dollars of money flow, it's important to understand that when there are strategies developed around how blockchain provides trust, transparency, and tracking for your mitigation planning, for your response or impact planning, that'll be seen as something on the cutting edge. That'll be seen as something that firms or investment dollars will want to follow, want to contribute to. That is very important. Likely the same with space. When we're talking about space cooperation, we're talking about technology transfer programs that allow for the better monitoring of space. We know what we know about what's happening on the Earth largely because of the space data that we're receiving today. And so as that space data improves, it gives us a better and better idea about the positive changes we can make and also how to mitigate the impacts that are happening. So I would love to do any questions if there's time, but if not, please feel free to reach out to me. The website of my firm, my social, or just follow my hashtag. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor George Pullen, for that informative session. Thank you so much for joining us in the summit.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now